Good. Test. All right, everyone. I'm going to stand up just to introduce myself. I'm going to sit down the rest of the time. My name is Lula. Thank you for coming here today. You could be anywhere on a Saturday, but you're here to learn about what's happening in your city, and we're very grateful to you for that. I'm one of the participants, organizers, mobilizers in the local Stop Cop City movement. All of us up here are. And throughout the space, there's snacks, there's shirts, there's pamphlets, information. So please, check all of that out, get connected. And if you at any point you have questions, we're going to figure out a way for folks to be able to submit their questions. So the end portion of this day is going to be spent like open discussion, talking, answering questions. Hopefully also getting to know each other a little bit, who's in the space, and just keep growing this movement. So I'm going to start us off here on the first slide. Let's go ahead to the next slide. We're going to set some community norms. There's different names for this: community guidelines, community agreements, space agreements. So these look like basically how we're going to act and treat each other while we're in this space together. So up here we have one mic, one voice. Pretty self-explanatory. Show respect for speakers and participants. Encourage healthy debate, civil disagreement. We don't all have to have the same ideologies or the exact same beliefs about things in this room. If we can, I think, get to a point where we're united on increased policing and increased funding for policing is not what our communities need. Like, that's really where we're going to stay focused on. Disrespect will not be tolerated. I'm not going to talk down to you. Don't talk down to me, kind of thing. We're going to organize and mobilize for peace and justice, and we're going to stay on topic. So we can easily become derailed, especially during the Q&A portion. So if we try to put the rails back on, it's not personal. We're just trying to make sure we stay on topic. And as a neurodivergent person myself, rambling is a thing. So, we'll be there to reel each other back in.
We should introduce the rest of us while we're up.
Yes, yeah. So before we get started, let's take a moment. We'll hear from everybody else, introduce who everybody else is, and then we'll dive in. Cool. Pass you the knife.
Hello, everyone, and good afternoon. My name is Edney. I'm with Not for Dallas, and I just want to say thank y'all so much for coming out here. We're just out here to give more information, to talk about what's happening in our city. So I just want to say thank y'all. Yeah.
What's going on, y'all? I'm Justin. I'm also with NARPR, and I'm here just to engage in the conversation, same as everybody else here. It's important for us to recognize the kind of the conditions that we are fighting under, the conditions that we are engaging in struggle with. And this Cop City is just one of the more recent and absolutely pressing matters that we as a community need to come forward and educate ourselves on, and to further the fight against this building from even starting from the ground up.
Hello, y'all. My name is Adis, part of Stop Cop City Dallas. I'm excited that y'all are here to learn a little bit more about what's going on in our community. So I just want to welcome y'all and hope y'all enjoy.
Cool. So let's go to the next slide. We're going to start with discussing the realities of Dallas police. The police department, we'll go to the next slide. This is like their mission, like succinct mission statement. The police department is dedicated to serving the people of Dallas and strives to reduce crime and provide a safe city. Sounds nice. Is this actually their function? Is a question I'm just going to put in y'all's minds as we move forward. Living as a people, living in society, humanity, we understand that like crime and violence exist, and it's pretty normal for societies to want to have a group of people that they can turn to that are organized, that can prevent, respond to, investigate crime, and also like uphold law, right? Like that feels like a pretty, like we should be able to have people that we can rely on to do that. And so the question is like, what what would be required though, right, to actually fulfill these needs and actually have that DPD mission statement be true. Because a few things that come to mind are, for example, equal protection and equal scrutiny for all, regardless of wealth, regardless of immigration status, regardless of race, regardless of gender. And so just like by a show of like, nonverbal cue, like, do y'all think that currently the way the system of policing exists, just Dallas, right? We're just talking about Dallas, is equal in that way? I, from my personal experience, can say hell no. Another thing is timely response to incidences, right? So we talk so much, and they talk so much when searching to increase budgets about, well, we need more cops so that we can have more response and better. So for the last, every year historically that you can think of, police and police budgets have been inflated little by little, more lately by higher percentages than before. And we know that the average response time to priority 2 incidences, which include things like robberies, major collisions, violent assaults, is over an hour and can even be longer than that. So that doesn't sound timely to me if I'm getting assaulted. Another thing is accountability to community. So, what do you do when the people who commit the crimes investigate themselves? That's not accountability. And so another thing to think about is when we follow the trails in terms of like what causes and prevents crime, the answer to that is not police. And so we'll get more into that later, but just kind of wanted to frame that a little bit in terms of what we expect them to do, what they say they do, and the realities of that they're not doing that. We can go to the next slide. So this is a pie chart that I wanted to include because it shows the Dallas adopted budget. So if you see the red arrow, it's like 61% goes to public safety. If we look at, for example, housing and homelessness solutions, that gets 1% of our budget. So there's a saying, right, that a city budget is a city's moral document. This is the morals of the city of Dallas currently, right? They got 1% for homeless solutions. They've got 7% for parks. They've got 1% for workforce, education, and equity. 1% for that. Transportation and infrastructure, we all know what it's like to need to go 15 minutes away and it's going to take you 2 hours on DART. That's 10%, only 10%. Life arts and culture, only 7%. So just to kind of show like it's kind of egregious that they get this much money out of the entire city budget, and it's safe to say they're failing at their jobs. We'll go to the next slide. I wanted to ask everyone this question, and this is like a popcorn activity, which means that you can just blurt it out loud. It's what I like to do, envisioning real safety. So a lot of the times we don't get to really think about what safety could look like outside of carceral systems, outside of policing systems. So I have first question is what makes you feel safe? Like, what are some things that you can think of that make you feel safe? Community. His guns. That's real. What'd you say? Shelter, having housing. Having sidewalks is one thing. If people don't have cars, they need to go from point A to point B. They need sidewalks to get there safely, lit. People you trust. That's true. Very hand in hand with community. If we don't know our neighbors, you start to suspect your neighbor. Everybody's looking suspicious to you when you don't have community. Another question is, what is crime and who decides? That's a pretty dense question, but it's a good question because what is crime and who decides that? What about crimes of survival? What about the parents that are having to steal formula, food, diapers, etc. because they are struggling? They might even be working 2 or 3 minimum wage jobs, but trying to pay a rent that's over half of their income. Who gets to decide what's crime and what is crime? What do police do in our communities? What do y'all see police do in your communities? Lunch breaks. Illegal lunch breaks. You said
Escalate trauma and cause trauma.
Escalate trauma, cause trauma. right? Ganging up on civilian residents. Yes. Have any of you here ever used an alternative to calling the police in a stressful situation? Ever dealt with something and not called the cops? Do you have an example you don't mind sharing?
I don't call the police.
Okay.
Ever.
Mm-hmm.
So, reaching out to neighbors, doing something in the situation to help. Like I'm trained in CPR, stuff like that. So helping the person get to safety,
Mm-hmm.
De-escalating the situation
Mm-hmm.
because the police only escalate, so
Mm-hmm.
de-escalate.
Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
One incident I had went to pick up my granddaughter from high school. She goes to Roosevelt.
Mm-hmm.
And when I pulled up, it was a gentleman telling I thought he was at that time it was his granddaughter, but it turned out to be his daughter. He was telling her and another young lady to go behind my truck and some more cars that was parked to fight. And I was like, oh my God, I know you didn't tell them. I mean, you would let them destroy their future on the school campus instead of giving them a different initiative or a different incentive to try to solve the problem with this. And I mean, he was like, nah, they're gonna fight. They're gonna get it over with. I was like, I'm gonna fight you.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, these are young ladies.
Mm-hmm.
You're gonna let them throw their future away.
Mm-hmm.
Not just your daughter, but this other child.
Mm-hmm.
And she gotta defend herself.
Mm-hmm.
And she don't know if she's defending herself against you or her.
Mm-hmm.
And that was so hurtful to me.
Yeah.
It was.
And you intervened with yourself and your
Yes.
own position of that's not okay and diffused it. I'm assuming nobody fought that day.
Yes, they did. I got
Oh, they
shoved
did.
around a little bit, but I still got in between.
Mm-hmm.
And the man was like, I'm moving. He was trying to push me out the way.
Mm-hmm.
And then I guess the security school people, they was like right there.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, y'all for real not gonna do nothing? And it was just like,
Yeah. There's a lot there in that story, right? There's a lot there because then there's the ways that our own people, we're in survival mode and, sometimes the way we show up is just also escalating. Yes, you have a question?
Yeah, I think one of the most important things me personally as a woman of color have taken upon myself, even if it's really good to do or uncomfortable, I've taken safety classes for myself, and I'm in the process of getting my license to carry because thankfully in Texas you can carry a gun, but it's important to carry a weapon of any kind when you're educated.
Mm-hmm.
And I like to do like nature walks and stuff like that, and it's not always safe everywhere. So I think just educating yourself, educating other people, especially those who are compromised, to learn ways that they are comfortable with protecting themselves is super important. Instead of, for example, calling the police when you don't know people.
Right. Yeah, what does it look like if we all take up arms? That's not today's conversation, but it's something to think about. So we can go into the next section here. So I want to just mentally prepare everybody. We're about to talk about death at the hand of police. Okay, so this is collective deep breath. People are out here dying. So there have only been 9 days so far in 2024 where police have not killed someone. You can see here it's color coded by the gray being the 9 days where nobody's been killed, the yellow being where one person's been killed, the orange being where two, and the red represents three or more individuals. So this is on a website called mappingpoliceviolence.us. And this is updated as of May 31st. This number has already gone up. We can go. This number has also already gone up, but police have killed 617 people in 2024. Each dot is a person.
oh my God.
Each dot is a person. Next. So I want us to bear in mind the Dallas police, right? Because we can talk about police violence as a national issue, and a lot of the names we hear in other cities and other places. But Dallas police have killed at least 50 people. Those are the people that we can track, report, have stories for. in the decade from 2013 to 2023. A tenth of these folks were unarmed, and a majority of them are the crimes they are being accused of committing are not crimes at all. It's the question of who decides what is crime, who decides what response happens to these crimes. So everybody here probably knows Botham Jean. We say his name because he was a Dallas resident. He was shot and killed in his own home by an officer, Amber Geiger, in 2018. She claimed that she thought she was going into her apartment, even though she was on the wrong floor. Different doormat, different whole housing situation, but she maintains that it was her apartment, and neighbors heard her banging on the door before she barged in and shot him. And this was the first conviction of a DPD officer in 46 years. Next. This is Santos Rodriguez. He was a child, a 12-year-old child that was shot at gunpoint by Russian roulette by a sadistic officer, Daryl Kane, who pulled the trigger on an empty round, clicked, repeated it, and told Santos that there was a bullet in it, and forcing a confession that the child could not give. His last words were, "I am telling the truth." And this officer only served 2.5 years. This is Clinton Allen. In 2013, Officer Clark Stoller responded to a domestic disturbance. The officer held 25-year-old Clinton Allen at gunpoint. Clinton was unarmed. He was shot in the back, and then he was shot 6 more times after that. And this officer faced no criminal charges and went on to continue to serve in the police force. Next. This is Tony Timpa. In 2016, he called for help in a mental health crisis because he was missing medication. And when police arrived, he was pinned down for 14 minutes, begging for his life, fearing that he was going to die, and he was killed by excessive force, and no criminal charges were ever successfully filed, and no accountability was ever obtained for Tony Timpa. Next. This is Tatiana Jefferson, who was killed in Fort Worth. She was shot through her window while she was babysitting her nephew. Breonna Taylor is also another name. O'Shea Terry is another name from Arlington, and Jordan Edwards from Box Springs. And so this is just a small number of names. So we just take a moment, take a breath, that we're here to have these conversations because this issue of policing is not abstract, right? We're every life has a family, every life is a person, every family is now missing somebody because of this systemic institution of policing. And yeah, so we can go to the next slide.
All right, so we're going to talk about the police militarization, the then and now, what it used to look like and what it looks like now. This is the Texas Rangers here. So the Texas Rangers were a white militia, so a group that was a non-government force. The recruitment of these Rangers was intentional. White colonists were hired for this. They had like special border terrain knowledge to kill and capture Mexicans at the border, and they also hunted runaway slaves. This recruitment served as a foundation for the creation of the Border Patrol in 1924. During this year, 1918, Rangers raided the Porvenir village, killing 15 men. Some of them were kids. They were exposed for their actions, but unfortunately, they faced no repercussions. So here we see this is Canton, Mississippi, in 1966. So this is when the March Against Fear, led by James Meredith, happened. So the march started from Memphis to Jackson, Mississippi. During that walk, during that march, James Meredith got shot and was hospitalized. So during this time, people were mobilized to join the march. So in this picture, we can see that marchers are trying to escape their tents because they have been attacked with tear gas by the Mississippi State Troopers. Right here, we can start to see more of like the militarization of weapons and equipment, such as like gas mask, billy clubs, and helmets. So in 1967, here, this was 1 year after 1966. So there was Detroit uprisings. So there was an uprising here in Detroit that lasted 9 days. During these 9 days, 43 people were killed, predominantly black people. 7,000 people got arrested. This uprising really was the boiling point of many underlying forces. The main one being police brutality, a deep pattern of racial segregation and discrimination in housing, education, and employment. This is another march, a protest in Memphis, Tennessee in 1968, where a protest of black sanitation workers demanded a livable wage. Okay, they worked like 60 hours and still couldn't make ends meet. So police responded by murdering a 16-year-old during this time. They used mace, tear gas, and gun fired to the crowd. So here we see it's a little bit more intense. This was in May 13th of 1985. Okay, so Philadelphia Police Department dropped a C4 bomb on the homes of the MOVE organization, killing 11 people, and 5 of those were kids. Okay, wiped 61 homes in 2 city blocks. So socially and environmentally focused MOVE members attended protests. You know, they supported animal rights, environmental justice, and racial justice since their founding. So you tell me, like, what this group does to threaten the police. So here we are in Dallas, Texas, 1983. This picture is self-explanatory. You know, police marching along with the KKK, providing them protection. This is a representation of the police militarization being used to protect white supremacy across our history. Okay, they're wearing different uniforms, but essentially they are the same people. So this is 2020. This is here in Dallas. Okay, this was in the response to the murder of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and other people that have gone unnamed. Over 1,000 people protested here in the city of Dallas, to which the police responded with riot gear, tear gas, and rubber bullets. Over 1,500 police from San Antonio and Austin and Houston were deployed to join this. So this is 2024. This is now, okay? And as we can see here, the weapons and the vehicles. Okay, there's no reason to be spending this much money on vehicles that look like this, or weapons, or uniforms that are just militarized. Okay, however, these vehicles aren't costing anything to the police department. They are being funded by federal funds, specifically a program called the 1033. So here's just another picture of what the Dallas Police Department suits look like. You know, this is very militarized. Like, what are you hiding from? You know, like this just looks like you're trying to camo from something. This was recent. Okay, this was 2024. At the beginning, closer to the beginning of the years, this was at UT Dallas. Okay, so this was the encampment for Palestine. So UTD called in 5 different police bodies for the Gaza Liberation Plaza, including the Fugitive Task Force, whose purpose is to locate the most dangerous fugitives. What were they doing at a school with students? I don't know. Okay. 21 people were arrested, including 3 faculty that were there to protect their students. Here's just another picture of the type of equipment and things that is being funded to the police. Yeah, that was a police officer from Collin County. So here we have crimes against food, because the police just escalated a peaceful protest and just started tearing down people's tents and wasting food. So all the pictures and stories we discuss really highlight the racialized police terror that BIPOC communities experience. Okay, these 3 points here are all parts of the same problem of militarized police forces being used to oppress Black and brown people. So they're used at the border, they're used for liberation movements. This escalation will continue with the training compounds that are under development.
Okay, and then we're gonna talk about more militarization and can y'all hear me? Y'all hear me? Okay, then we're gonna talk more in depth about the historical militarization and response to the police. So, going off of his point in between 2014 and 2015 in Ferguson, in response to Missouri police officer Darren Wilson shooting 18-year-old Michael Brown. There was during the peaceful protest, a curfew was established for the protesters, and riot squads were deployed in the area. And during the months of the protests and criminal investigation for Wilson, more protests broke out with escalating violence from the police. And in response, they threw tear gas at them, rubber bullets, smoke bombs, and even flash grenades, and to disperse the protesters. And after Wilson was not charged for the criminal charges, the Missouri Governor Jay Nixon deployed the National Guard and even more police throughout the Ferguson protesters, and which caused the protests to stop. And there are closely parallel developments here in Dallas. And in Dallas, it has this long and ugly history of police murders of Black and brown communities and occasionally even white people. The movements in Dallas was largely driven by a larger movement around the country, and it was spontaneous and had no leaders for a couple months, and it was energetic in the community, and it happened in the evenings and downtown. And there were even, and in 2020, during Minneapolis, when George Floyd was wrongfully killed by Derek Chauvin, there were more peaceful protesters even took place. And even though the protests were peaceful, it frustrated the Minneapolis police department, and they responded with similar violence in Ferguson with rubber bullets, tear gas, and much more. And also here in Dallas, with the wrongful deaths of Botham Jean, Tatiana Jefferson, and Jordan Edwards, and they were still peaceful, but they still responded with more violence against the community, which is wrong. And that's pretty much all I have to say.
All right, so what is a cop city? So to understand what Cop City is, we have to start at Riotsville, USA. Riotsville, USA represents the fictional towns created by military officials for urban warfare trainings. So here we see, like later in 2006, these fake towns were recreated with our tax dollars in the Israeli occupation force facilities known as Little Gaza. Okay. In Palestine, where soldiers trained to kill innocent Palestinian civilians. So where did the term Cop City come from? So Cop City is a name coined by Atlanta organizers in the response to the Atlantic Police Department, who plans to turn 300 acres of forest into a mock city, another compound for basically a playground, so that cops can up their anti-riot training. So here are a little bit of resources on Atlanta Cop City. You can go to defendatlantaforest.org for more information and resources on the Atlanta Cop City. All right, and here's a map to give you a visual of how many cop cities are in development around the nation. Over 7 facilities are being built. Okay, with one having now been approved for funding right here in Dallas.
I got the fun part. So we talked a lot about the militarization of the police. We talked about the history of policing as an institution and how it has affected the material conditions of our communities. But what we need to also acknowledge is what exactly the Dallas Cop City is, how it is being reported on by Dallas PD and Mayor Eric Johnson, and just to know exactly what it is that the kind of propaganda machine that is a central part of the prison industrial complex, as well as the police institutions, what exactly they are putting us up against. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a moment to watch a very I'll say interesting video about the what is to be expected as per the Dallas PD themselves about what this cop city is going to bring about.
Laptop speaker.
I guess.
Whatever works for works.
Well, I don't have my laptop either.
Oh, what about mine? If you play it on there, will it show up on yours?
Bigger than ourselves. When you look through the uniform, you know, we have fathers, mothers, sons, daughters, grandchildren, who are those first before they put this uniform on, where they leave their families, they miss birthdays, they miss special occasions, to go out and do a job for people that they may never know, they may never meet. It's such an honorable profession. You know, we've lost lives in this department, men and women who have sacrificed, who've given the ultimate sacrifice. It's here in the city of Dallas, but throughout American law enforcement. They're extraordinary.
I'll move the plan.
Being an officer encompasses a great deal of risk every day. If not your typical risk. Everyone sees TV and thinks we're in a line of fire every day. We are, but we're not. It could be the small things. Dangers go without saying.
11 officers were shot. 5 of them were killed. Police say this city right now, George, is just grieving.
Unfortunately, our jobs put us at risk, and we understand that. We accept that risk because overall, we know for our society and for our communities, we have to be there. Training, making us more alert, making us more aware, making us more cognizant of what's happening, helps us to mitigate these risks.
On my first day at the academy, I was obviously extra excited to join the Dallas Police Department. Exciting time, very nervous time for me, but I was so happy and grateful to be able to join this police department. There's not much difference in this building than it was back when I joined 28 years ago. It is exactly the same, and we can stand a bit of improvement. So you see the young people are bringing mats into the big room now just because we have maybe 2 or 3 classes that are trying to do physical fitness training or defensive tactics training. But since we don't have a lot of room to do PT, we work with what we have. The best case scenario is all we can do is work with what we have. We don't have enough bathroom stalls. We don't have enough shower stalls to cover our needs. The weight room facility at maximum could probably hold about a good 10, maybe 15 individuals in there, but you have an academy of about 300. We have greatly outgrown this building several years ago. And so if we're trying to do quality training, this building has to reflect that.
It's embarrassing. This department is so storied. Our men and women deserve better than that. That's not representative of who we are. That's certainly not the first thing we want a new recruit to come see.
The Academy at UNT Dallas is a game changer for Dallas police and for departments across North Texas. This state-of-the-art facility will promote the convergence of ideas, research, policy, training, 360-degree learning, and do so on one of the most beautiful campuses in Texas. I believe this top-tier structure will attract the best and brightest recruits. Perhaps most importantly, it will build the strongest and smartest police department in America. We are proud of this unique partnership between UNT Dallas and Dallas Police, creating the largest police department with an officer training facility on a 4-year university campus.
Currently, we have top-of-the-line instructors, we have great recruits, we have great officers, and we need an academy that has the resources, the equipment to be able to put all this together, which we know will result in better community trust, better officers, and a safer city.
Our city is a wonderful place, and we are one of the safest big cities in the country. Our goal is to be the safest big city. The way we achieve that and maintain that is by having the best trained police force. in the country. And a police academy of this caliber, which is what we all want. Our residents will benefit from it, our businesses will benefit from it, and our visitors to the city will benefit from it. So it's essential.
I wanted to be a police officer because I wanted to take the bad guy off the street. I wanted to protect people. I wanted people to have a chance to live happily. I wanted kids to walk to school safely. I wanted parents to come home from work safely. And that's what every member of this department wants to be as well.
So there's a lot in that video. There's a lot of propaganda, a lot of painting this as more as different than what it actually is. So let's go over a couple of things here that they conveniently decided to leave out. One of those things is they showed the academy that they're trying to build, right? They show the CGI of this brand new campus or brand new part of the campus that's going to be so state of the art and so well maintained for all the things that they want to do. But what they elected to not include was the cost that this is going to require, and that I just want to compare these figures. So the current yearly upkeep cost for the current Dallas Police Department, their facility, is about $1 million. They have estimated that at the very least that they are requesting for this new facility is $140 million. And that's strictly for the 5 acres of land that they specifically said that they are going to and they're going to dedicate to these buildings. This does not include the 20 acres of land that Mr. Mong, the president of UNT Dallas, has promised to the Dallas PD in order to expand their reach within the campus. They also talked about some of the needs of the cadets that are currently not being met by the state of their current facilities. They talked about not having enough weights in the weight room, or not having weights that are as state of the art. There's only 10 to 15 people can be in the weight room at one time. I mean, y'all, does this really matter to? Yeah, when we're talking about the level of repression that people are facing, the level of economic instability that our communities are facing throughout Dallas, there are people here that can only barely, if at all, afford their monthly rent, working 2 to 3 jobs, as we said before. I mean, there may be people within this room. There are people certainly that we all know that are struggling to make ends meet, and they're talking about they don't have enough room in their rec room for training for their keeping up with their physical fitness. It's infuriating. It is absolutely infuriating. And what they also don't talk about is the people that are actually funding these this facility, and one of them is the Caruth Police Institute. If anything about the Caruth family, they're one of the oldest families within Dallas or DFW Metroplex. They are currently worth at the very least $600 million. These are people that have invested millions and millions of dollars into policing within DFW. They have a police institute on UNT Dallas campus that has been used as a sort of recruiting and propaganda machine for these communities. These are people who have a clear vested interest into expanding the amount of control and power that the police have to police our communities. And one thing I wanted to that I noticed here, and it's been on my mind a lot recently, is when they talk about, we need to be prepared to face any dangers that we're going to face on our jobs. We need to be fully alert, fully prepared, fully ready to address all the dangerous situations that we're going to. They see that they emphasize that point, and what that where that mentality comes from is this system of policing that came about in the 70s and really took off in the 1980s during Reagan's era, was this system of broken window policing. Have any of you heard of it? I'm sure taking it, so y'all know. So this is essentially this idea that these communities are predominantly poor, marginalized nationalities have a base level propensity of escalating violence, that they need a strong and firm hand of the law and the state in order to keep us from essentially hurting ourselves and our societies. And this is the level of the sort of like mentality that goes into a lot of the police training that not just within Dallas, but within the nation as a whole. There's a company that does combat training, the CQB, close quarters battle, I believe is what it is. But they another private institution that heads a lot of the training that Dallas PD, as well as in Philly and in I believe LA as well, certainly in Baltimore. Essentially a lot of the larger like metropolitan areas, and part of that their training is for people to expect that any situation that you go into is going to be one where your life is on the line. Now, if you are a person, police officer, whoever, and you go and you get a call and you go into somebody's place, even regardless of whether it's this person is reported to have a weapon, or they're just, maybe they're having a panic attack or anything like that. They need help. But you go into this situation thinking that your life is going to be put on the line, and that at any point in this encounter that you can die. How do you think that's going to affect the way that you go in and address the situation? You're not going to go into, we talked about how the police, when they come in these situations, their primary motive is they say to de-escalate, but what they actually end up doing is they escalate the situation at every single turn. That's where we get people who, we get instances of unarmed people getting killed. We get instances of people, whether armed or not, one of their first options, or one of the first, like their go-to option is to escalate situation and provide a imminent threat to this person's safety. And that's where we get, we talked about the militarization of the police earlier, and we talked about the SWAT team as well. But when they're called into a situation, when they're called into a protest, when they're called into an encampments that were going on this past couple months, they're there to shut shit down and to make as many arrests and to harass as many people as possible. And so they didn't have any of that in the video, but it's for a reason, folks. It's because when part of the expansion of the police and policing as an institution, part of that, or what goes hand in hand, is this sort of concerted effort to propagandize the intent of police and the intent of the people who are the police department as a whole, but also the people that are running the numbers behind the curtains, as well as the politicians like our illustrious mayor and his intention of bringing about a more peaceful Dallas communities, when this cop city runs completely antithetical to that point. So I want us to keep in mind that we are not just up against a physical threat, we're up against a propaganda threat. We're up against a threat that is of transforming people's minds and mindsets about policing into being fooled into believing that institutions like this, new systems like this, are necessary for our communities to be safe. We don't need these institutions. We need more concerted money. Though $140 million needs to go straight into the communities and our socioeconomic needs. People shouldn't have to go choose between making their rent every month versus paying for daycare, versus sending their kids to school, versus giving their families, providing their families an adequate meal. And if they were really about helping our communities, are really about actually going in and making sure that we have our needs met, they would not be propping this shit up just so that they can say that they're trying to do something. So from here, that was a little lot. I got a little, this shit fires me up for real. But what we're gonna do is we're gonna transition into a Q&A portion. So William here is going to pass this mic around for folks. We're gonna ask that everybody that comes in, if you have a question or comment or whatever, to try to keep it to a minute, maybe a little bit more, but we want to make sure that as many people get an opportunity to say their piece, to point out any more points that they have about the video or about this whole thing, and that everybody's voice is heard, because again, this is a community-centered event and we want to hear from the community.
Hey y'all, and I'll say one more thing. If you make a comment once, we'll go ahead and hold on getting back to you until everyone else has had a chance to go. So just keep that in mind for any comments that you have.
Hi, thank you. I'm Elaine Campbell, and my comment is this has been great information, but I'm hoping that we also have some calls to action, because every single thing that you listed was decided by people who were elected. The last sheriff runoff, less than 3% of the people voted. The commissioners run elections. We have the same people who have been in the office for over 30 years. So what are we doing to make changes? There are a lot of groups because I'm involved in them. I know Alika is involved in them. There are a lot of groups that are doing things to make changes. So I'm hoping we can announce those, talk about some actions that we are taking to make changes, because we can do that. We have the power to do that. So
go back a couple of slides real quick. Are we gonna answer right away? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what can we do? So this work really started in response to the May election, the May bond election. So that was our first action that we took, was to try to mobilize around Prop F, which was the proposition that was specifically giving money for this facility. The way that the bond happened was really slimy. They said we have all these millions of dollars. They gave about a month's time for the city to be informed about how this money was going to be used. Did some really fake, just for the optics, community meetings, got very little to no community input, and they went ahead and did what the hell they wanted, like they normally do. Like Miss Elaine just said, these people are elected and then they do what they do with very little to no accountability from residents whose lives they're playing with.
we had the same city council people that been in there for years.
Yeah, right.
Same commissioners, the same mayor.
Right. Jennifer Gates.
Getting voted in.
Yes. And even if they're not voted in anymore, right? So we had Jennifer Stobart Gates in the video, the blonde white lady that was like, yes, it's going to make our community safer. She was a council person, and she's one of the most insidiously evil council people that's been on Dallas City Council. We still have several more currently. But we've moved away from Prop F because that happened, that passed. Our goal in that action was to raise awareness, to move and shake, to not let them get away with something without having any dissent, without them having basically, like, there's a saying in Spanish, like un pelo en la sopa, like a hair in the soup, right? Like we wanted to be like, no, if you're gonna do this, you're still gonna get our peace of mind. So we moved away from that, and currently the Stop Cop City coalition is in the state of re-strategizing and regrouping, and we're inviting all input at this time, like about kind of what networks do y'all have? Where do you want to see things that can happen? What connections can we make together to create more of a ripple effect, so that when we do have calls to action, we're reaching further, right? And we're not just the same people in the same room, like over and over and over again, although I do want to see y'all again, right? So right now you can spread the word. You can follow our coalition. You can sign up to volunteer and find actions at our Linktree. So currently the actions that we're taking are we're focusing on doing more town halls, more educational events around the city. We're starting here because it's District 8, and this district is where the facility is planned to go into. And so I'm sure we have District 8 residents here with us. We have a District 8 resident panelist with us. Yeah, so y'all know. So we're doing that. We're also doing canvassing events. We're going out and tabling in the community. So the volunteering right now is looking a lot like that. Like, where can you take the word of the stopping Cop City? I was gonna say God, honestly. Am I wrong though? And and eventually there's going to be just more of that. Like, there's like surveying, flyering. We take the approach of like all tactics are good tactics, and we're not going to badmouth each other's tactics collectively. So there are people that are going to be moving in other ways. There's some focus on electoral stuff. There's some focus on direct action stuff. There's some focus on community building, alternatives building. And so those are all different conversations, and we highly encourage you to get plugged in. And that's at the base level. Like, this is supposed to be all welcoming work, right? Because everybody comes with a life experience that has some tie to policing and the ways that policing affects our lives. And then we're inviting you to connect with organizations. So in Stop Cop City Coalition, you can join as a member, as an individual. You can join also an organization. We're representing NARPR, the National Alliance Against Racist and Political Repression. And that's just one option. I mean, we could talk about NARPR for a minute, but I won't. And there's ways to get involved and get the baseline knowledge information. So yes, definitely, like Ms. Lane said, like actions, like being called to move. Right now we see there's a lot of intersection between like our liberation movements. And I say our as in like gender, race, sexuality. There's the movement for liberation for Palestine, the movement for Black liberation, that all of this is rooted in, right? Like all of this is rooted in the movement for Black liberation. And so there's a lot that we could be doing even on the front end of like, if you haven't learned about certain things, like seek out those resources. And then you can even let us know like, hey, an educational event on this topic would be great because I don't know about it. And that kind of helps us keep going. But absolutely, maybe today's calls to action don't feel as like, you like ready to like shit up. You're just ready to kind of like take this heat, this fire that you feel in your belly and do something. And right now we're asking that you keep it burning, feed it, and start paying attention, start looking into it. A lot of this research that we compile, anybody can find. Anybody can find. So start asking questions and start getting connected, and we'll be making these steps together forward.
So I had an opportunity to speak to Mr. Mung at the Friendship West. They held an assembly there, and they were going over the propositions, and I asked him about Proposition F, and I said Cop City. He said, "Oh, that's just a buzzword. It's nothing serious." So I stopped, like you said, I put her in the soup, and the meeting didn't go any further than that. We stopped right then and there, and he was like, "Well, we're going to be bringing the best technology and the best advanced police force in the world to Dallas, to Southern Dallas." And so what that boils down to, I don't know if y'all remember when they brought the state troopers to South Dallas a couple of years ago, and a young man was killed, and there was no justice for that. I live down the street, so I know this is going to be a test ground for them, for what they do there. They're going to bring it out in the streets. So I am a precinct chair, so I'm planning on giving that information out to the community. But we must really understand that the young people that are doing this, also, y'all didn't bring up the subject of what they did to the young people in Atlanta that went up against Cop City. And I think y'all need to really address that with the RICO charges. Y'all really need to address that, because if you're asking people to go out and do this, which is the work, you need to really address that, because those young people are facing serious charges, and they did not know each other, but they were all working in conjunction to stop this. So I'm just saying, we know what the work needs to be done, but we also need to know what is going to come against us so you can plan better.
Yeah.
That's one of the strategies. And I just don't want people to be, when it really, really starts to get where it needs to get to, it's going to be some issues, and we need to be prepared on both ends. So I just wanted to make sure that y'all knew that. You know what I'm saying? I know what we're going against, but we also need to know that they're not going to,
Go down easy.
Yeah. So that's all I'm just saying with that, just to be aware of those situations. So thank you. That's all I had to say on that.
I had somebody back here, and then we'll hop over. Just want to go.
Can you talk a little bit more about the proximity to Black and brown neighborhoods that this COP facility will have, and how the advancement of their technology, training, and anti-riot or whatever will perpetuate even stronger conditions of over-policing, or you know, how they police specific crime hotspots, you know? Can y'all talk a little bit more about that and the impact it'll have on that community specifically?
Okay. So the short answer is they wouldn't put this in Highland Park, right? They're in our communities. They're in our land. I mean, y'all saw they're clearing. You do in instances of desperation, not having your basic needs met, and having to turn to finding any means of survival. You're now a criminal. And so they deny the denial, like Ms. Olinka said about the denial of that it's a cop city. Oh, that's just a buzzword. That's very intentional. That's also one of Justin's points, right? Is that, oh, they're calling it a training academy. Like they just need a shiny new training academy. This is a militarized training compound with roots that go way back to the very first attempts to try and repress anti-war, oppression movements globally. And so the impact that we can assume is going to be that more people are going to be incarcerated, more people are going to be put in physical harm's way when it comes to interactions with police because of this new shiny technology, these new techniques that they're using, right? We know that they learned the knee on the back maneuver from the Israeli occupation forces. So there are programs where, you know, they are receiving and exchanging terror tactics, essentially, on how will they better target civilians, how will they better repress movements. And the other thing is, you know, right now they're not showing us their plan for the mock city. Right now they're just saying it's just 5 acres for buildings. They're not also telling us what they're doing in those buildings. They're not telling us what they're doing on 5 acres of buildings. You know, it's going to be, and then that's not including the other 20 acres that have been promised that are state-owned land that surround the original 5 acres. So we're at 140 million just for those 5 acres. What we know is that safer communities don't have more police. Safer communities have more resources. So when you've got 140 million plus going into a militarized compound versus housing, shelter, transportation, education, I mean, what do you know, like, it's just more and more of that intentional divestment to despair. And once you're in despair and you have no way but to just do what you can to survive, now we have the criminalization of homelessness. You can't sleep in public. You can't do all these things. You know, it's a crime to be poor. And that's always been the case, but we're just seeing it more and more heavily legislated. And now the physical brute force behind that's costing us in bloodshed, right? Like, it's costing lives. And it's also, like Ms. Elaine had said at the beginning, it's the trauma, the inflicting trauma generation after generation, and debilitating families and entire lines that way. So it's going to take a lot of the work, the risky work of, like, you know, que en paz descanse Tortuguita, an organizer in Atlanta who was murdered by Atlanta PD for protesting the construction of the Atlanta Cop City in the Weelaunee Forest. That's an organizer. I mean, they just joined up the fight and joined up the cause, because it's like, once you see it, how can you unsee it, right? And so, yeah, there's risk level in those instances. People who are organizing bail bond release projects, you know, everybody was targeted, and now everybody's a grade A felon, you know, because of a movement, participating in a movement for liberation, for peace. And so there's that, and then there's also the work of imagining what we need instead, the creative work of what are the alternatives that we can create safety nets for in our Black and brown communities that are the targets, and And so, yeah, it's not a cop city because they don't have the plans for their mock city drawn up yet and released to the public, but you're in a city. We see where you are in our city, and where are you going to take your training? Out into the city, right? And so, like, whether or not they want to accept what it is that we're calling it a cop city, right? It's 70 plus cop cities being built as a national project. Like, we can call it what it is, you know. I think that kind of answers the question. It's just, I mean, we're
Actually have a little bit to add to that.
Mhm.
So I just want to add a little like context to this because you know we're talking about this as a form of police repression, but this is part of a larger conversation about national oppression that we are facing through various institutions of our nation. I'll speak a little bit to just briefly about as briefly as I can about the level of repression that students are facing, as Olinka brought up earlier. This past well, we talked about the UT Dallas campus and their encampment that was raided, and the people were brutalized and mass arrests were going on. This similar thing, thankfully, not to the level of violence that was experienced on that campus, but we were still facing repression on the UTA campus this past semester. Actually, we had and I'm talking about we as in I am a current student there. I'll be graduating next month. But yeah, we had an encampment there for at least 8 days and 7 nights. And a very successful encampment. We decided to set up tarps instead of tents because they introduced a policy the same week that our encampment was placed again that stated that any sort of sleeping equipment that was be put on the campus grounds would be grounds for an arrest. Surprise, surprise. And so we decided, you know what, we're going to have our encampment regardless. We're not going to set up any tents. But at every single opportunity, the UTA campus PD would have constant surveillance of all of our members. They had drones follow several of our members back to their cars in the middle of the night. And they would come around at 2-3 in the morning as we had ended up taking shifts. So the cops couldn't say that we had equipment there that was just left for littering. They would come by the people that would just be, you know, lying down or reading or whatever, and shine flashlights in our faces, asking us, "Are you awake? Are you awake? I saw you sleeping. I saw you dozing off," to try and get us on a charge so that they can have rain to come in and raid our encampment. And eventually on Thursday, we started on Wednesday, so on the Thursday they did come in. After 3 times they tried to tell us that we needed to leave because our equipment wasn't being used and therefore could be considered littering. They warned us 3 times, and on Thursday they came in early in the morning and they took everything. Thankfully, folks were able to get our people out of there so that nobody was arrested. But that's just an example of the level of increased repression that we are facing because and I firmly believe this, that the level of political consciousness that our communities are experiencing is on the rise. We did that campus as a means of protest against the Israeli occupation of Palestine, and our encampment is not, we're not alone in that. These encampments have been propping up, these protests have been propping up all throughout the country this past year. And people are angry, people are upset, people are starting to realize that these institutions that have sold us this lie that they are here to protect us, that they are here to keep our community safe, have a vested interest in oppressing us and taking away all of the resources that we deserve, our wages, our resources that we need to live. All of these things, people are coming up and realizing that these people like Eric Johnson, people like Mong, the president, and all the Cruz Police Institute, and these families that pull the strings behind the curtains. They are investing so much effort and so much money, and I can't forget Greg Abbott. Of course, yeah. They are investing so much time, so much effort, so much money into trying to come down on us as hard as they can, because they realize that our communities and our level of political consciousness is on the rise, that our level of cohesion, we're having conversations like this. Yes, absolutely. And so what they're going to do, and to your point specifically, what we're going to see if they are successful in bringing this about, is we're going to see an even more escalation of these tactics, and even more escalation of this level of police brutality and surveillance within our communities. And because they feel their grip on our lives and our mentalities is loosening, they recognize all these things that are going on in the country, and they want to come down as hard as they possibly can. So we need to be prepared for when they have a tentative date of 2027 to start this. Or to finish it, excuse me. 2025 is when they're going to start it. This is what they said. So as we get closer to those dates, what we saw in Atlanta, we're more than likely going to start seeing here. The level of struggle, the level of repression that our communities are going to face. Communities, whether they're being active in combating this cop city or not, are going to face an escalation in tactics, as is their design. But we need to be ready and prepared to have provide as much resources for people facing RICO charges, people who are need bail for their for them being arrested at any of these protests, or whatever situation that they deem is necessary to increase the level of repression on our people. And we need to make sure people are aware and educated about what is going on, and we need to do that as soon as possible, and before shit hits the fan, honestly. But yeah, I guess to your point, this is a larger project that is being pushed forth by the reactionary conservatives, by these neoliberal Democrats that just say, oh, well, it's not that bad. It's not going to, you can just comply with the police, comply with these policies, and you'll be fine. These people who clearly only want us to be subservient to their needs and their will, and we need to be ready to fight back as hard and as swiftly as possible. There's one quote. One of my favorite historians and Caribbean revolutionaries, Walter Rodney, one of my favorite quotes from him is, if there is to be any proving of our humanity, it must be through revolutionary means. And I believe that with every fiber of my being, and that we need to keep this in mind as we are moving forward in our struggle for liberation.
I just wanted to thank Alinka for not only being at that meeting and bringing up Stop Cop City at that meeting, but also sharing that commentary with us, because there are so many parallels from our work in 2020 to our work now. And one of those parallels is that they will try to delegitimize and trivialize our work, just as they said, oh, that's just a buzzword. Stop Cop City is a buzzword. They said the same thing about defund the police. And they also ended up switching it around and using our wording in the end. But they just try to discard our movement as a small group of radicals in the city of Dallas, and not residents as a whole. So that's something that we're going to have to be prepared for again to happen. That's just one small part of what they're going to do. And we need to combat that by starting our work early in educating the community, because similar to then, we didn't really have it all happened so quickly that we didn't have enough time to educate the community and go out there,
before they started trying to control the narrative. So I think that's something that we have as an advantage this time, is that we do have time to go out and educate our communities, do a lot of outreach, a lot of town halls, political education. So that's how I feel we're gonna maybe have a leg up this time.
And then you use the crime stats over here for their purposes. So that's
Where you have police looking for things,
Right.
there will be a person arrested.
yeah, and that's the big thing. And I know we don't have
More crime, there are more police.
And we have to also make sure that we understand when she was talking about the elections. Tanel Atkins, who is the council person for Highland Hills, he's looking for money for that. Royce West said that he would donate 20 million to it. See, so we have to understand.
Who's your commissioner? John White Price?
John White Price. He's for it. All of these people that Missy Lane talked about. Tanel Atkins said that he wants it. Royce West, and that can't, so these politicians want it because they want to be in bed with Mr. Hmong. And we also have to understand that the IDF, same thing. When he said that he's going to bring the top cops here for training, he's meaning them too.
They've been training in Krav Maga for years. That's
Right.
the Israeli
Right.
combat techniques
Right.
that
And
they
also-
use. Police departments across the U.S. have been training in Krav Maga for about 10 years.
Right.
And those are lethal physical tactics against people. So
And the Karus, when you're talking about, they were the largest slave holders in this area. We got Ruth Haven, all of that. So these are slave owners building up the plantation again. And what gets me is that it's here in this community at UNT. Has anyone spoke to the UNT students about how they feel with this being on campus? Are there any UNT students from here?
So we do have a pod of UNT system students that are working with us that recently joined up the coalition. And no, they had no clue. They had no clue it was going on.
And see, and that's because we know that all the best rebellions start on the campuses and the education of the young people.
Right.
See, so when you're talking about getting out and educating, they got a law institute there too. So this is a strategic plan for them to set that there.
Get ready for it.
To get ready for it. And you forgot to say, well, you did say it. All of this was brought about because of George Floyd.
Right. Yep.
All of that is for observation. All of it is observation to be put into. And why do you need a cop city in Alaska? What rebellion went on in Alaska? Was it the seals against the otters? What happened? Nobody told us. But I'm just saying is that we have to look at it from a war perspective.
Real quick, there is somebody in the back that wanted to.
Oh. Okay. I forgot what I was gonna ask. But I guess I'll comment. Do you want to hold it or you want me to hold it? Okay, good. Thank you. So I'm from Dallas, born and raised, but I lived in San Antonio for 13 years. And while I was there, I was part of Defund Coalition and did a lot of grassroots work there. And I am excited to be here, but I'm also kind of like anxious because I kind of lived through that and I watched so much happen. I watched so many lies be told. I watched them regain the trust of the communities all over again. I don't know how that happened, but it is war. There is, and I hope we're prepared for that. They don't play nice. They've got a lot of money. They've got a lot of tools that they use. And I heard you use the word political consciousness in the community, and I want to believe that. I really do, but I'm not seeing it a lot of the times, and it's not for a lack of people like us communicating. I think they win over and over again. They do the fear mongering. They convince people, on the ballot, it said public safety. That's all it said. It mentioned none of this. And so they're clever with their language. So we've got to be more clever with our language. They're clever with their physical tactics. We might have to do some physical training. We might have to. And I just want to put that out there, that energy out there. I'm fired up. I've been fired up. I had to retire for a little bit because it took a lot out of me the last 4 years. But but I'm back and I'm in my hometown. And I just hope everybody in this room is like really fucking ready. Because once we hit the gas again, let's not stop.
I was just wondering, what alternatives do you actually provide to community citizens? So taking politicians off the table, because as you mentioned, public safety is a concern for Dallas citizens, and they want the cops to do something. At this point, they're like, y'all better do something. We don't care. There's uprising shootings in my communities. They didn't used to shoot on this block. Obviously, we have gun control laws, but I really haven't heard, like, how do you talk to other citizens that actually want things like this? They may not be aware of like the war tactic training or how aggressive they can be, but they want to see change. And they're like, okay, community activists, I've done that. We have programs in the community, and there's still more violence. Of course, we talk about, you know, providing affordable housing and things like that, but do you have data to back that up of like how it would make the community safe when you talk to other citizens who are in support of things like this?
So I would want to dispel one thing, right? We're up here like just helping lead the conversation, but we don't show up with all the answers.
I have an answer to that question.
Well, go ahead and I can fill in whatever after you.
So, and I don't have it off the top of my head, but would happy to send it. There are other communities in our country who have specific examples of how they have maintained and become much safer by funding the community rather than the police. There is real, actual data behind that. There is no data behind safety becoming greater from funding the police. That data does not exist. But there is data, examples, people who will send you like the whole program, because I've gotten them before, of how a community can fund the community and become safer. That absolutely exists. And I unfortunately, our current leaders are not for that.
Yeah, and I'm not saying it doesn't exist, but there's a lot of citizens who don't believe in that way. And I think, just, you know, it's good to have these conversations, but I also think community control for this campaign. More and showing that data and showing what's happening in other communities.
Do we just bring it up as a point, or do we have to wait for somebody to answer it?
No, I would. So, sorry, real quick. I do want to answer, like, make a little segue about that question. Yeah. So I was just saying, like, up here as presenters for today and panelists, like, we're not claiming to have all the answers, and I can't off the dome like give you all the statistics and stuff. A lot of all of us up here are coming to this because of like personal lived experience with police and policing, and so. But yes, there are concrete like plans that other communities have been successfully able to get some money from taken from police budgets into like funneled back into community for things like unarmed mental health crisis response teams, like neighborhoods being funded to be able to have their own de-escalating team that can respond to like domestic disturbances, neighbor disputes, things like that. I mean, this is a long haul fight, and it's going to take a lot of. It's like we mentioned, like that we're at war with this. Like there's a lot of work to do at the level of like re-empowering communities and pulling the curtain back and like kind of getting. It's like everybody's in an abusive relationship with the state. And it's like we're in this cycle of being like love bombed and then like, you know, abused, and then apologies and fake resources, and then we feel good again, we're trusting them again because we need them, and then the cycle just keeps repeating. So there are alternatives that we can look to all over the country, all over the world, I would extend that to, but there are even more specific like steps to get there, and I think Justin can talk to that about.
Yeah. So that's a good question, and it is something that people are concerned with, because at the end of the day, we want our communities to be safe. We want our communities to we want our people within our communities to be able to go outside and not have to fear any sort of repression from the state, and also just be able to walk around and walk your dog or take your kids to school or just live life. And as I can speak a little bit to this, as far as what NARPR has been has been pushing forward, specifically the Chicago chapter of NARPR. So what they recently had a big win last year was establishing a Chicago Safety Commission Board, which is essentially designed to have give the people within the different wards within Chicago the say on what happens with the policing within their community. So what that looks like is that there's commission boards that the police directly there's a commission board that is like a line from the people to the police. They are sort of have a oversight over what kind of police or what police are being are allowed to do within these communities, what their any sort of like disciplinary action for these police officers, and overall just a means to have a as much of the community input into what goes on within the physical spaces within these wards as possible. This is something that is a long fight that Chicago Alliance is the name of the Chicago chapter has been doing, and it took them plus the work of other organizers within Chicago in order to make this happen. And I actually, about the organizers, I was one of the people that flew up to Chicago in February in order to help canvass for one of the members of that commission board that ended up winning that election, along with Mayor Brandon Johnston that got elected last year. And what I learned from that is that people are concerned. People want to go out and not have to worry about anything happened to them or their loved ones. At the end of the day, regardless of how exactly of what it looks like, we want an end to the police repression, and we want our voices to be heard as community members, because we're all here. We all exist in this space together. We are connected together as a community, and the police have shown time and time again that they do not have any interest in actually helping us and helping our material needs. So with that, these people, these police, these institutions, while they exist, need to serve us and serve out the purposes of what we need in our communities. So that's one thing, one way that Chicago, or one example that I can bring up. And for something like that to happen here, it would require, again, it took them years to get that. But this is not, there is no easy fix to this stuff. These issues that we're facing, they've been around. I mean, we talked about the historical context of this. This goes back hundreds and hundreds of years. And as we said, they're going to try at every single turn to curtail any efforts to actually provide assistance that we deserve at every opportunity. So whether that's through protesting Cop City, our struggle is going to go far, far beyond that. And we need to be ready to fight for these alternative solutions, whatever that looks like. I mean, that looks like one thing for Chicago. That could look like something slightly different here, or another kind of oversight board, or whatever it is. But we need to start by ensuring that people are aware that that stuff like this Cop City is not the answer. Is actually the answer that they put forward in order to placate us and to fool us into believing that they have our interests at heart, and that they're going to address our needs the way that we need them to. And we cannot be fooled by that. We need to do the work to undo that level of thinking in people that we see out on the street. But yeah, it's a long, like I said, it's a long fight. It's a long means to actually get shit done. But we need to be wary of the kind of oppression that we're going to face as we move forward, and look to other chapters and other organizations and other cities that have been successful in moving that struggle that struggle forward.
The city of Dallas actually approved the community police oversight board in office in 2019.
They did.
So it's already in place.
And it just kind of apply to that. Yeah, but yeah, I was gonna say like it's by name, but it is a very toothless institution, or not institution, group. It doesn't really have any sort of actual control over and accountability for the police.
I can say something about the oversight board. So that oversight board that you're talking about doesn't do anything. The only thing that they're capable of doing is sending strongly worded letters to city council, and that's it, right? They have no like actual power. So the difference between what NARPR and what happened in Chicago is proposing is in Chicago, their oversight board, 1, does have power over the police, and 2, is directly elected by the people. Ours is appointed by city council. So I wanted to sort of clarify that point.
Right. So what you can do is create amendments to the charter, which is the Constitution of the City of Dallas, that will get us to the point where we make that. But that's what we're working on right now. Exactly.
Yeah, I was also gonna. My name is Chelly. I'm also part of the coalition for Stop Cop City, and like to another example of like what are alternatives to policing in Mexico. A lot of folks immediately think of like the cartels and like what that impact has on especially rural communities that are constantly being like invaded by cartels that don't necessarily just like have control the industry, like the drug industry, but they also control other illegal types of industries like chopping wood. In Michoacan, there's a really like sad and disgusting example on how cartels control the avocado industry, and that's why we have really cheap avocados a lot of time. They also control illegal logging, and a way that people have been able to combat that, because the state is incredibly useless in those cases, is auto defense groups. So people in the community create and respond to like these leeches, honestly, these leeches who are coming into their communities, destroying their environments to protect their land. And that's just like one example, and that's been something that they've had to just organize themselves. And I think, community control of the police is one that NARPR gave as well. One thing that I wanted to bring up is like the most common form of theft in the United States is wage theft, and like there is like no way of really controlling that. And I think that gives us an example of like what the role of the state really is in that and how it plays out is that it's like you're not here to like protect workers necessarily, but like like the interests of the bosses, if that's not being something that's being ever directly addressed.
Okay, I think we have time for one, maybe 2 more questions. I've got one over here real quick.
Peace, man. Is it up? Is it on? I'm not from here, man, but I travel here often, right? And I'm liking the conversation. One creative way to fight against police, we could form some think tanks, some new space, and everybody petition property taxes. Because again, I know the brother said that the Cop City is being paid by federal funds, but your local police are paid out of the general fund, and that's out of your property taxes. And so that's one way to fight back organically, is petition your property taxes, right? The 10th Amendment that grants police powers does not do so without constitutional restriction. And so we can educate and we can show up in entry-level spaces, but we have to start exercising what is our right to privacy, what is our right to due process, what is our right to free speech. And what do the internal policies say to the Supreme Court rulings? I mean, I know we've got a shitty court right now, but what do the internal policies, like if an officer chases you, what's the vehicle pursuit policy, and how does that align with the constitutional liberty that we have against unreasonable searches and seizures. Those are the educational spaces that we absolutely need, rather than the introduction to police for another 10 or 15 years. You know what I mean? Because it's going to come a time. I mean, with Cop City coming in, you've also got Project 2025 on the horizon, and they'll consolidate the FBI with the state police, with the local police. There's a highway that's being constructed from South Carolina through Texas that's to be specifically for local and state and federal police. And so when the police are everywhere in your community, how do you fight back? How do you activate? And everybody's not going to have a gun. Everybody's not ready to use a gun. But how do you protect yourself against an arrest when you know that they don't have the jurisdiction, nor do they have the authority to? How do you protect yourself against an arrest? How do you, and this really takes a repurposing of care, right? Us as neighbors, we have to, we really have to renew our lease on each other, because if you see somebody that you don't know being abused by the police, where do you step in and you take that police officer down and drop his ass off at the county jail for the oppression that you speak of? You know what I mean? How do we train for that? And I'm not saying that to be comical, but how do we prevent more death, more harm, more abuse by showing them that we not only know our rights, but we are going to exercise the effort that it takes to promote those protections. Traffic, the Dallas Police Department completed over 350 traffic stops last year. If we were able to protect ourselves on the road, we could fight back against the police as well. It's got to be more than protests and rallies and entry-level education spaces. It's gotta be knowing what that 10th Amendment stands for, knowing what those constitutional restrictions are, being very sound in what our rights are, and then creating coalitions to exercise those efforts that way, so that we're always ready to stand against the motherfucking police.
I had 1, 2, 3.
Hi, I just wanted to thank y'all for masking and making this a space where people feel comfortable masking, and wanted to reiterate a point that I'm sure everyone is aware of, that everything is connected. And I know that you brought up homelessness and sleeping outside being illegal. And a great indicator of homelessness is disability and being disabled, and conditions that lead you to being less able than average people. And we're currently living through COVID, a pandemic that is mass disabling people. Every time you catch COVID, you're at a 10 to 20% of getting long COVID, of being permanently disabled for life. And this is all part of their plan, where people are disabled, they're ending up on the streets, they're being put in prison, they're being profited off of their labor. And by keeping the community safe by masking, also the anti-masking laws that are coming up in North Carolina and other places that are being passed, they're associating masking with criminal activity in those laws to prevent people from stopping the spread of disease, to prevent people from hiding their faces, to prevent people from opting out of facial recognition technology, the same facial recognition technology that is used by drones to follow people to their cars, the same facial recognition that is picking up all of these protests. And by masking, you're not only keeping everyone around you safe and healthy, you're also preventing police and the government from seeing your face, and keeping people safe from fascism as well. And I just want to thank y'all for allowing me to bring the purifier also, and for masking and making it very safe in here for people to do so.
Hi, I just listening to everybody's really great information. I'm just in my mind just thinking, what can we do? I'm thinking about my immigrant community, my community that doesn't speak English. And what are we going to do to educate them and being able to communicate in their language what it is that we're facing? And it's really difficult. I mean, it's for myself, like I'm 6th generation Texan. My first language is English. So when I hear whether I go in the store or whether somebody's asking me, oh, you do this, you do that, and they're talking to me in Spanish, I can understand it, but being able to respond in the way that I want, it's not so easy and it's difficult. So I'm just thinking like we definitely have to find ways to communicate to the Hispanic community that doesn't speak English and to educate them. I went to the jail and there was so many women asking me, can you help me? I don't understand. I speak English. They have my husband. I don't speak English. They have my husband. You know, so much is needed. And, you know, we're just facing, I feel like it's this huge war that we're getting ready to, and it's not going to get any better. But I'm just thinking like we definitely have to educate our communities and, because they think, oh, more police is protection. They don't know. They have no idea. But we do. I just feel that's important to be able to educate them.
Yeah, that's super important. So I'm a first generation, grew up undocumented, to DACA, to fell in love with the right person, got married, and I should be a permanent resident soon. But I've grown up through that journey, right, of being like the interpreter, the translator, the medical interpreter, the legal interpreter, the all the things. And so it's definitely a conversation. I mean, we're lucky that within the coalition group that we've been able to form so far, that we're a pretty like mixed group. And so there are a lot of us Spanish speakers. Spanish was my first language. I'm still a fluent Spanish speaker. And I think right now the focus is like, I mean, I'd love to leave your information, right? Like we want to, like the more that we can get into communities and get into spaces and build relationships with people, like I do have the language to have conversations with people in Spanish in their own language, you know, and there are others and we can teach each other, right? Especially for some of us who speak Spanish, but we're like, nah, we're like that, you know, Spanglish Spanish speaker, you know, so like I don't know how I would talk to somebody actually seriously. And we're working on having all our materials in Spanish as well. And so it's just kind of like one of those things where language justice, disability justice, like it's all connected. We want everybody to feel and see all of themselves in this movement, because that's what it's going to take, right? If people don't feel like they're on the line, it's going to be very difficult to get people to do the bare minimum work of like helping us shift the culture narrative and the just, I mean, I really see that as one of the biggest front, you know, like that's the front end of this war is like breaking through that mental blockade that people have to even be willing to think of things differently. And with our immigrant communities, I mean, damn, it's there's a lot there. And it's not just unique to like Latina immigrant communities, right? I see it with my Black neighbors too. Like I have some difficult conversations with some of my neighbors, like where it's like we just internalize so much and there aren't really many spaces where we can talk about things. And once people do get to talk about things in like a judgment-free zone and we can actually walk through things together, like, but does that make sense? But have you ever thought about it? But what about your son that's been in and out of jail off of a slew of tickets he got like 10 years ago, you know, like, and the warrant just doesn't quit. And the warrant is just constantly chasing. And so, I mean, yes, that point is important. And thank you for bringing it up. This town hall, we didn't do like intentional outreach in Spanish, predominantly Spanish speaking communities. And so the first town hall we did, and we had like live interpretation ready and stuff, we still didn't have people that turned out that needed it, you know? So it's just examples of how like there has to be so much intention behind how we're building community and where we're going, and then creating the spaces for people to feel safe and welcome, you know, like bring your kids. Some people are like, I don't know if I can go because what if I take my kid and my kid's being loud and people start looking at me weird? No, you know, the most vulnerable and marginalized among us, like we gotta make room.
Hi, I'm from Austin, and I came to I work with some like Walani Defense Society and part of student encampments down there. The Texas State Employee Union, all three are organizations that I feel are like ready to be radicalized and to show up to stop Cop City in Dallas. So I have like two questions. Like, do we know, is this really just like DPD training facility? And two, kind of talking about like coalition building and like outreach. The community movement builders are in Atlanta and have been working on Stop Cop City. And are they a part of this coalition and helping, since they can kind of be a conduit of information and just strategy from Atlanta to Dallas?
I can answer the second part if one of y'all want to take the first part. The first part of the question was, is this really just for Dallas PD?
It's not really for Dallas DPD. It's more so it's across the country. So like people across the country come here to DPD and also Atlanta as well to do more training, to learn more physical and threatening tactics towards the community. It's because when they put on the ballot it says public safety committee, but we all know that's bullshit. So they're very careful when it comes to their language about public safety committee. They said, oh, we need this facility in order to protect our communities, in order to to respond to the violent riots that happened throughout Dallas. And we all know that's bullshit too, because there were peaceful protests that were happening during the George Floyd's uprising. So they say, oh, DPD, they need these facilities. They need this facility at UNT Dallas to respond to that. And they're going to bring in more police officers from throughout the country, not just Dallas, but also Fort Worth, also Austin, San Antonio, Atlanta, all the other states. They're just for now they say DPD.
It's a regional training
Yeah,
facility. Is what it actually is. So it's a regional training facility. Yeah. So that's gonna encompass North Texas, areas of the Southwest, Southern Texas as well. Like really, there's no limitation, right? But they can package it as Dallas needs new. They don't have enough showers. Their restrooms don't work. It's like, I mean,
25 acres of land dedicated to this. Y'all really think that they're gonna just have Dallas PD in there? Like, no.
You gotta look at that also as the first South Michigan, because all these land here, this is the farthest they can go, that they say, because then when you look at that, they just start putting infrastructure into that neighborhood just a couple years ago.
Right.
I grew up out there, no sidewalks, no street lights, but now it's being put there. They're putting all the lights and the water and everything. So it is an occupation of brown and black and poor people in this community, in this community. And like you said, the fugitive task force. We have to also think about when we get ready to talk to these people, how many of them, like you said, are undocumented. You know what I'm saying? And that is going to be part of that process.
Yep. Yes.
To come in and, undocumented workers.
Yep. And then just to answer the second half of your question, and I think we're out of time. But we can stick around. I'll be around if you want to have people be lingering a little bit. But the second half of your question about the coalition piece and like how there's Austin-based groups that are ready to be activated to help with the Dallas fight for stopping Cop City, and then how there's community movement builders and how that could be a conduit. So community movement builders is in Dallas. And our coalition is tangentially connected, but we're working on having more of a direct relationship, because some of the work that's happening locally too around this is like, how do we network build and how do we heal our own organizing spaces so that there's not so much like fragmentation, and so that we can all be, getting in on those resources and all of that. So we do plan on having like representatives from this coalition be like in like fellowship essentially with some of those folks at convenings that are coming up soon. And so those lines are being established. And again, like just like anybody who has a network of communities or anything like that, organizations, faith communities are a big one. Like please drop your information somewhere or DM us on Instagram or something so that we can find you and connect with you and make sure that we don't lose you. Yeah, because we do with within reason, right? Because there are some relationships that are going to work and some relationships that are just not going to work. Like we probably are not going to align ourselves with any organization that wants to increase the power of the state, even if it's under the guise of like reform. And this is good for, if you're talking about expanding the power of the state, it's just not going to happen. But if we're talking about revolutionary reform where we're weakening the state and producing some harm reduction for people who are already incarcerated or being targeted for incarceration, then we can talk, right? Then there's more of a common ground there. But yeah, thank you for bringing that up.
And can I just, as a closer, for anyone who's interested, we've got all of our information to get connected with us. We've got a QR code to sign up to be a volunteer with us. We've also got our Instagram handle and our tiny URL that leads to our newsletter, which we'll be starting to put out frequently for y'all to stay updated on all the things we're doing.
Yeah.
Appreciate y'all for coming out.